Lake wind scoured the freight tracks and the ravine they called Kingsbury Run, carrying the smell of coal smoke, river water, and something sour that lived under the bridges. Lanterns rocked over tar paper shacks. A freight horn wailed and rattled the viaduct. At first light, a boy slid down the muddy bank hunting bottles and went still. In the weeds lay a torso, pale against the thistles, arms gone, head gone. Officers scrambled down the slope, boots sinking, notebooks out. Cleveland had seen hard times in the Depression, but this felt different, calculated, clean, and cruel. Months before that morning, in September 1934, patrolmen had pulled a decapitated woman from the lakefront. Her head was never found. No family came to claim her. She entered the ledger as the Lady of the Lake, a nickname that tried to soften a fact no one could face. Someone had cut a human being apart and left her for the water. Back then it seemed grotesque, but singular. The city turned the page and kept walking. In September 1935, 2 boys exploring the gulch found a headless man, his skin hardened by some chemical, as if the killer wanted to slow decay. Across the ravine, searchers uncovered another mutilated man the same day. The headlines shrieked. Reporters stamped new words into type: torso, butcher, headless, and the name that would stick: the Mad Butcher of Kingsbury Run. The panic wasn't just about murder. It was about a murderer who seemed to be choosing when and where the city would look. Everything about the landscape favored a hunter. Kingsbury Run was a slash through Cleveland's industrial belly, a place of culverts, trestles, and siding yards where men rode the rails for work that did not come. Shacks clung to the banks like scabs. Burn barrels threw off greasy light. People drifted in without leases or pay stubs and drifted out without notice. If you wanted victims who would not be missed quickly, you hunted there. If you wanted rain and time to erase your handprints, you dumped there. By early 1936, the river and the lake were giving corpses back. A middle-aged man's torso washed in on a winter chop, the limbs and head absent. In June, a young man turned up near Jackass Hill at the edge of the run. In July, searchers found another dismembered body in waist-high grass. It wasn't only the decapitations that chilled detectives. The cuts at wrists and ankles were clean, following joints. Some bodies were scrubbed, others were drained. The killer worked with speed and a practiced calm. Forensics as we know it hardly existed. The detectives had fingerprint ink, cameras, plaster, and guesswork. Many victims came from the city's margins: drifters, laborers, sex workers, people who didn't have dentists on file or employers to ring when a cot went cold. Pathologists argued over skill. The cuts looked like a butcher's in places, a surgeon's in others. The police chased both possibilities, canvassing slaughterhouses and medical schools, interviewing anyone with access to knives and privacy. Nothing stuck. The fear spread faster than evidence. Streetcar conductors warned riders to travel in pairs. Boarding houses set curfews. Parents far from the ravine kept daughters home after dark. Newspapers teased extra editions, and downtown hawkers sold them by shouting the worst facts first. At headquarters, maps filled with pins. The morgue filled with drawers labeled John and Jane Doe. A detective later said the only thing they found in abundance was rumor. Early in 1937, the river yielded a woman's torso, legs wrapped in burlap and tucked under a bridge piling. Later that summer, the lower half of another woman's body surfaced near the Lorain-Carnegie Bridge. Again, no head. The placement felt theatrical, places where the remains would be discovered quickly and cause maximum alarm. It was as if the killer were conducting the city, raising panic like a baton. Cleveland's safety director, Eliot Ness, had been the city's golden hire. He was young, disciplined, and famous for leading the untouchables against Al Capone. He modernized traffic enforcement and hammered at police graft, but the butcher made those victories vanish from page 1. Citizens demanded a face and a set of handcuffs. Ness turned to raids and roadblocks, and still the bodies appeared. On the night of August 18th, 1938, Ness led squads into Kingsbury Run with police and fire crews. They dragged men from shanties, checked papers, and questioned scores. Then the torches went up. Flames ate tar paper and scrap lumber, and the camp collapsed into a bowl of sparks. Ness said the sweep would starve a predator of his hunting ground and scatter future victims to safer beds. To the men who watched their shelters burn, it felt like punishment for being poor. It also didn't deliver a killer. Across 4 violent years, 1935 through 1938, with the 1934 Lake victim as a likely prologue, the confirmed toll reached at least 12 and probably 13. Others may belong to the series. The count changes with the teller. The marks are stubborn: decapitation, dismemberment, dumping in water or ravines where weather finishes the work. The missing heads crippled identification. The lack of witnesses crippled the rest. 2 suspects haunt the file. Frank Dolezal, a bricklayer who knew several victims, confessed after long hours of questioning, then retracted, then died in jail before a trial could test anything he said. The other was a Cleveland physician with a violent past and a ruined liver. Ness grilled him for hours in a downtown hotel, and by some accounts left convinced. The doctor checked himself into a state hospital and died there years later. No jury ever heard his name. Cold cases are built on proof. Cleveland only had stories. The people left behind tried to name the dead. Coroners took plaster casts of torsos, noted scars and broken bones, and published photographs of tattoos hoping somebody would recognize a heart, a star, a bird. Sometimes a relative arrived with a name. More often, no one came. The city buried them with numbers. That, more than the gore, explains why the story has teeth even now. The victims were the invisible people, and invisibility is what the killer counted on. Ness never shook the weight. He reformed departments and won quiet battles against corruption. But the question Cleveland asked, who did this, never gained an answer he could take to court. Did he have the right man and no lawful way to prove it? Did the butcher simply move on when the city grew watchful? Ness died in 1957, with both theories still walking. Decades later, the file keeps pulling at investigators and writers. Modern labs have matched a few bones and refined dates. Historians redraw the timeline. Internet sleuths pin maps and swear they see a pattern everyone else missed. What remains are the photographs. Boxed remains lifted from weeds, river water streaking a coroner's table, a tattooed forearm laid next to a ruler. They are not artifacts of mystery, so much as a record of how thin the city's shield was when hunger and despair crept in. If you walk the route today, the bridges still throw their shadows at noon. Yards hum. The rail lines run. In the ravine, the ground remembers what people try to forget. The scrape of burlap, the rattle of a cart, the hiss of water on stone. On certain mornings, when fog rides up from the lake, you can almost see the city as it was, hungry, gray, and braced for the next headline. The names we know are few. The names we don't are the story. They were men without papers, women without anyone powerful to speak for them, people for whom the only ledger was the morgues. We tell their story because the killer never answered for it. We tell it to mark the line between being unseen and being forgotten. Thank you for listening to The Lantern's Tale. Subscribe for more true stories, if you dare.